So in this video, I'll discuss part A and B of question number 1. So let me start with writing the PDF for one of these random variables. The PDF for one of the x's with the parameter theta is just 1 over theta when x is from 0 to theta, and it's obviously 0 otherwise. Okay, so this is the PDF. We all know the PDF for the uniform distribution, but this is for any one of these random variables. Now they've asked me in part A to write the joint PDF of all of these random variables. So I need to figure out the joint PDF of x1, x2 up till xn, and the parameter is theta only. So all of them have the same parameter. So the reason that I can write it is because they are independent and identically distributed. So because they are of this nature, I can write this joint PDF as simply the product of their individual PDFs. Okay, so it's nothing but the product of each of the individual PDFs. And since each of them have the same PDF, that is 1 upon theta, the final joint PDF would be 1 upon theta times n, theta to the power of n. Obviously, when the individual x's are from 0 to theta. Okay, so this is all that there is for part A. It would be joint PDF would be 0 when the x's are not from 0 to theta, and it would be 1 upon theta to the power of n when each x is from 0 to theta. Since these are continuous random variables, we don't really care if there are strict inequalities over here and here. It doesn't really matter because continuous random variables don't really have a probability for an exact value. So we could have strict inequalities or we could have slack inequalities. Now part B is where things get interesting. So to explain this, I'll take the help of an example. Imagine you have an infinitely huge box, and this box is filled with a lot of balls in it. These balls have some number written on them. Okay, so I know that the number that is written on each ball is in between 0 and some number theta, and the distribution of each ball is uniform 0 to theta. Okay, so it just replicates my given problem. Now what I am interested in is the likelihood function, this function over here that we have found above, right? And it has the limits, these limits, each xi is between 0 to theta, and if it is not between those, the PDF is just 0. So we've already talked about this. Now imagine you took out balls from this bag, this box. So you took out several balls from it and you found what the number written on them was. Okay, so let's say the first ball had a number of 0.4. The second one had a number of 1.3. The third one had something like 0.2. Next you got 1.6, then you got 0.8, then you got 7, no not 7, let's say 1.7, and let's say that's about it. So you picked out 6 balls from this bag and you found these numbers written on them. Now what I'm interested in is this value of theta. I want to make an estimate for this theta. I don't really know what this is, but I need to figure out the best estimate for this theta. So that is where the likelihood function comes in. So once I have observed these values, the xi's are no more random variables, right? They have transformed into their actual realized values. once they have realized their values, the function f is just a function of theta. It's no more a function of the xi's. So the function f is just 1 upon theta to the power of n. So in our this little example that we took here, it would be 1 upon theta to the power of 6. Now I'm looking for some value of theta such that this function is maximized. So that is what the maximum likelihood estimator does. It tries to find an estimate for theta that would maximize our likelihood function. Okay, so I'm looking for an estimate of theta that would maximize the likelihood function. So if you were to plot this likelihood function, it would be a decreasing function like this. Okay, so as theta increases, the likelihood function would decrease. Right, but there is a subtlety here. There's a hidden condition that the xi's should be between 0 and theta. So these realized values must be between 0 and theta. It cannot happen that the real theta is actually less than a realized value. So if the balls in our bag were from 0 to 10, let's say, I could get samples like these. But the person who made the bag, if he made sure that the balls were from 0 to 1, I could never get these values. So this endpoint, this theta, must be greater than the maximum of what I've observed. So theta must be greater than or equal to the maximum of all the realized values. Not the maximum of all the random variables, but the maximum of all the realized values. So the theta has a lower bound, a lower limit. That is, it must be equal to, greater than or equal to the maximum of all the realized values. If it were to be smaller than one of the realized values, it just cannot be. So it cannot really happen that it is smaller than any of the realized values. So the likelihood function would just be 0 if theta were less than the maximum of the realized values of all these random variables. So that's about it. So using this graph, you can obviously see what value of theta makes the likelihood function to be maximized. It's just that value of theta which is the maximum of all the xi's. So for our little example here, that value would be theta. Our best estimate for theta would be 1.7. Right? If you were to assume, let's say, something like 1000. So imagine the person who made the bag put in the numbers such that they are uniformly distributed from 0 to 1000. And then you went ahead and drew 6 balls and you found this as the sample. This sample here. Now it would be very, very unlikely to obtain such a sample wherein each ball has a uniform distribution of 0 to 1000, as compared to when you have a uniform distribution from 0 to 1.7. So that what it really means intuitively to have a maximum likelihood estimate for a distribution such as this. Now in most cases, you take out the log of the likelihood function and then take out its first derivative and essentially use calculus to figure out the maximum likelihood estimate. But this one is a special case. This is because we have a discontinuity here. The function is not actually continuous in the entire range. So there's a discontinuity at this point. That's why the calculus fails. And you must use your own intuition or you go by this graphical approach. So this is our answer here.